Today we're going to do something a little different. A lot of you really liked that interview video that I did that went through a really common front-end interview question. So I thought, how cool would it be to see one of those types of questions solved by someone who is incredibly smart? So today we're going to interview Jordan. Jordan is my partner. He currently works as a staff level engineer at Miston Labs, and he's going to be showing us how to be really good at interviewing. This man, when he interviews, gets so many offers. It's kind of annoying, to be honest. So I thought it'd be fun to see what really happens behind the scenes of his brain. Now, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Now, how do I start an interview? Oh, hello.
Can I grab a soda? Oh, sorry.
Oh my God. Yes. Hurry the fuck up. Hurry up. You are insane. You are the most ADHD person I've ever met. This guy, dude. This fucking guy.
You know, I have AirPods in so I can hear you.
Okay, crack it open and okay, yeah. Fucking loudest fucking shit in the world. Alright, I'm gonna write a 1, no higher. 0.
On communication, I'm feeling very weak. And on focus, candidate could not stay focused.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it'd be so
I do this in people's interviews, which is the crazy thing, that people have to deal with this while I'm interviewing them.
That's rough, dude. If I had to sit there and hear you just like moving stuff around, I'd be like, excuse me?
I'm pretty good at muting.
Okay.
The really clacky thing is these coins.
Do
These
it.
are,
Let me see.
well, normally what I do is
Oh God, Jordan, no. Oh, that's awful.
So what I'll do is I'll grab them all and I'll go like this, and then I'll kind of.
That is the worst sound that I've ever heard.
I'm muted. I'm muted. So
okay.
You don't know.
You don't know. Okay, how do I start this?
Who knows what you do when you're muted?
Hi, I'm True. And
that's gonna go at the beginning of the video, isn't it?
And you are interviewing for a role at this company.
Which company? I actually just I uploaded my resume to Indeed, and they just they do some fan out.
It's a stealth company, so you wouldn't know.
Oh,
we don't have a name yet. We just go by that company.
That company Inc.
That company Inc. Okay, here's your question. Today we're gonna build something that's going to be similar to a Redis server. Do you know what Redis is?
No, I've never heard of it before. Can you explain it to me in
That's
detail?
Cool. You should just Google it real quick. It's probably this is gonna be so scum.
Just Google it.
Google it.
I can't explain. All right, I've Googled it, and now I have a.
You have a great understanding.
Knowledge.
Okay, perfect. The goal is we should have some expose function that takes in a command that's a string and returns a response. So initially, we're going to deal with 3 commands: set, get, and delete. And so get is pretty self-explanatory. You'll pass in get and then a key, a string key, and that should return a value whether or not that key exists. The set command will also take a key and a value, and that should just set that key to that value. And then delete will take in a key, and that should return that key but delete it from wherever you're storing it. Quick side note here, we decided on this returning hello, the value instead of the key, which I think is a better approach. All right, let's get started.
Yeah, so is it okay if I do this interview in JavaScript? It's just something I'm most comfortable with.
Absolutely not. Yeah, you can do it in JavaScript.
Okay. Ideally, I'd use TypeScript here, but I don't know how to set it up with Replit. So
do you want me to change it to TypeScript?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. You know, normally this is the part where we would ask some establishing questions. I think, understanding performance characteristics would be important here. So I'll ask, like, what part of the application is this being used in? How important are things like performance? And how much should I orient around this?
So don't worry about performance. It's a non-concern for this question.
Okay, cool. And I noticed that you've intentionally left some of the wording around kind of what you're asking here vague. Is this intentional, or is there like an expected like, function that I return or class, or, is there anything that you're expecting, or can I kind of leave it up to me?
It's leaving up to you. So whatever you decide.
Okay. And you also mentioned building something that's similar to a Redis server, but the functional requirements kind of don't include any server componentry. So I'm assuming that that's like, left as an exercise to the reader here, and that I don't actually need to deal with servers. I just need to deal with the functional components. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And in terms of, yeah, yes is the correct answer.
Sorry.
And in terms of like functional growth, how much should I, right now you have three functions outlined. How much should I worry about, this, I'm familiar with Redis, so I know that Redis has more commands than there are people on Earth. And so how much should I worry about the command size growing?
Yeah, I would say take into account that there might be more commands, so build around that. But that will be a secondary part of this question. So if we have time, we'll get to it.
Okay, so I'm probably not going to over rotate on that initially,
Mhm.
but I'll try to pick a design that works well for that.
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. So we'll just go ahead and start implementing and create an empty string on accident. So I think that there's like logically two ways that people would approach this. It's like functional or like class-based in JavaScript at least. I'm gonna maybe just do a class because I think that generally people have an easier time understanding these, even though in actuality I would probably use a function. But we'll deal with that later. So I'm noticing that we'll have some like maybe like process method that will take in some command and return some value out. This is not TypeScript, so I cannot add types. Now let's just go ahead and new this up, and we can just initially call process. It doesn't really do anything with the command, so we'll just validate that we can actually run things. And maybe in process, I'll just log the command, and I'll also just pass in this get non-existing to begin with. I don't see anything. Okay, there we go. Sorry, it took a minute for it to show up. Great. So I'm gonna right off the bat, I can tell that I'm gonna need to store some data. Lots of ways that people store data. A common way is to use objects like this. Objects are not actually empty. They have properties through the prototype chain. So I generally do not use empty objects to represent like data stores. You could also do object create null, which would oh my gosh, which would just create an object with a null prototype, which would actually be an empty object in the sense of like if you did property access, nothing would resolve. But I think that like a map is a significantly better fit for the kind of this problem, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of ignore process, and I'm going to implement some of the actual underlying functions here. So I'm going to start with class methods. I don't think that this is where we'll end up because I think if we extrapolate out, you said there will probably be some more methods. Class methods will not scale with us, right? Obviously, because I think class methods will get to a point where they are there would be thousands of class methods, and we don't want to do that. But I think for now, just orienting around getting a working solution, this is going to be fine. It's going to make it pretty easy for us to extract out later. So getting will need a key, and we'll just return this data get key. Setting will need a key and a value. And here, where'd my cursor go? There it is. This data set key value, and then just to kind of match the document and behavior here, I'll just return the string OK. And then delete returns. It looks like I need to get first. So I'll get the key, and then at the end I'll return the key, and then in between I will delete the key. Cool. And if this results to nothing, like if the key hasn't been stored already, value will be undefined, and then delete this will be a no op, and then we'll just return undefined. So that behavior seems to still be okay. Great. So now we kind of need to get into this command processing piece of it. So what I'm going to do is do the pretty obvious thing here. I'm going to split the command on spaces and kind of collect arguments on it. What I'm going to name this to is command string, because I think that like I want to name this first destructured argument command. So this will match against like get, set, delete. And then we're going to do a very nasty thing for now. We're going to switch over the command. We'll just have case get return this get, and then we'll just collect out the args, and then we'll just spread them in, right? So we'll just duplicate this twice, and this will be set, and this will be delete. And I go ahead and take some of these test cases up here. I'm going to basically just, oopsies, I'm going to just take these and turn these into an array. And I'll just for each over these, and I'll console log. Oops, this does not have the same formatter as VS Code when I type Command Shift P. Cool. So I'll just log out whatever is the result of doing this like this. Another fun way to do this, by the way, if you ever kind of want to do this, you can map over them like this and to get kind of an array of values, and then for each just directly into console log like this.
Nice.
You kind of like, this will log some other garbage, so you can also do like val and then val like this. This does not have my formatter. I really need to remember that. Anyway, let's go ahead and run this. And
you have an issue. I already saw one.
wow. Cannot use command for fourth initial. Yep.
Nice.
That is absolutely valid. Cool. And so now we get undefined, okay, hello, hello,
Perfect.
which
Cool.
seems to be correct. To validate this behavior, maybe we also will add a last get, which should return undefined after the deletion, which it does.
Nice.
Also, probably worth having like a has. I know that this isn't part of the API spec, but I just think that like this is kind of a table stakes function, and it takes like one line of code to implement. And I generally recommend doing it because then it lets you do things like, gosh, my tab indentation is not working. I'm actively fighting against repl. Now we have this has, which will return false. And if we hoist this up here earlier in the stack when it still should exist in memory, we should be able to see that this is true. Now, at this point, I can clean this code up so that it's much more reusable, or we could maybe progress with the prompt, whatever.
Yeah. I think I should bring in the other thing and then you can clean it up to make it work with it, right? Okay, cool. All right, so now for the second part of this question, we're going to implement 3 more commands, hset, hget, and hgetAll. So hset takes in a key, a field, and a value. And so similarly to how we had above, we're going to set at a key, a specific field, and then that field will have a specific value. And it'll return okay. hget takes in a key and a field, and it'll return the value at that specific field. And hgetAll, given a key, returns all fields and values at that key as JSON. So similarly to how Redis works, everything. I think Redis returns an array for hgetAll, but we're going to do it as JSON.
Yeah, I think it returns like an entries array, but yeah, I think given the kind of the space we're working on, this makes sense. So great. I think this is a perfect opportunity to start breaking these off. Actually, with 3 additional commands, you could just keep adding it into this list, but this obviously is going to be kind of annoying. I'm going to do a registration approach where we'll have distinct commands that get registered into the class, and the class will kind of just be responsible for running it. And so what you can kind of imagine would be you'd have something like git command. It would be like this, and then it would have some handler that would take in data and args, and then we would basically just port this over. So basically you get a global store, and then you have to perform something within the global store. With TypeScript, you can actually do some fun type things here, but we won't worry about that. And I'm going to change this to just name because I think that that's like a little bit more intuitive. So we'll go ahead and write a set handler. And there's what I could actually do with set here. So we have key value, and I'll destructure out of the args and correct this all later. We could do it like this, which is like a fun way to technically have the return value without having to create a function body. But I think the more sane thing to do here would be to create a function body with an explicit return. We'll have del handler will be whatever this logic is, copy, paste. And I won't port over has since that wasn't part of the spec, but you get the idea of how it would be ported over. Cool. So now we just need to kind of tweak some of this. I'm going to keep arguments as an array and just destructure out of this array. I just think that the consistent typing of this function is going to be a little bit easier than making this basically accept variable amounts of arguments. And we just got to remove all the usage of this here. And sweet. Let me talk really quickly through some other design considerations here. We're treating everything mutably. So, I'm assuming that we have a global store that we can freely assign data in and out of, and that there's like a underlying set of mechanisms to do that. You could also do this with like diffs generation. So instead of basically imperatively working with the store, I could generate a diff set that could get applied to the store, but then we'd have to have, some way of applying those diffs. I could also get a, proxy object that represented the store, and then I could, mutate that, and then those could actually be applied, separately, as opposed to, in real time applying all of these to the database. You could use something like immer to kind of produce that. Then you get like an immutable store, because right now our store is like highly mutable, which is fine for the problem. Like the problem does not require an immutable store. In fact, it benefits greatly from having a mutable store because we don't duplicate what we're storing. But just calling it out that, I've intentionally, there are several ways to solve this. I'm going with like mutable global store approach. There are other ways to do it. Cool. So when we construct this up, I'm just going to kind of take in a list of commands here. We'll go ahead and register these. And in our process command here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of these class functions that we have. And what I'll also do is I'll go ahead and move these into privates. These really should have been privates to begin with. And now what we can do is we can, in process, find the correct command. So we'll basically, I'll just do it like this. Command name, and then we'll load the particular command. So if not command, what do you want the error behavior to be? Like, what do you expect to, if I pass something that's, completely garbage input, what do you expect to happen?
I mean, I would assume that all input is correct, but to error handle this, maybe just
I'll just throw an error there.
throw an error, yeah.
Fine. Yeah, I mean, if we're expecting all inputs to be valid,
good catch
from a problem perspective, we'll just go ahead and throw. That's actually something I totally missed. I didn't have a default case on my previous. So, we live and we learn. Writing code late at night after a long day of work, you make some mistakes. Hey, I interviewed once on COVID and I passed. So we'll go ahead and interpolate this into, just so that folks can kind of like, I like trying to be, helpful for people. And then we'll have this will end up having a handler. We're going to, so there's some interesting things that we could do here. We actually, this will actually have access to like a this, which will just be this outer object. Mm-hmm. We could prevent that if we really wanted to. We could call it with undefined is the this value.
Interesting.
Why is that not highlighting? Weird. But we're going to pretend that that's okay. I just wanted to call it out that we're not rebinding this, which means that these objects can have access to themselves. They also can through literally having access to their outer object too. So it's kind of a silly thing to think through, but something that someone actually has given me flack for in an interview. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to call it out.
Interesting.
And we've already collected the args in here as an array, so we can just kind of return whatever this handler returns. So now if we go ahead and run this, it'll probably break. Yep. Cannot read property commands of undefined. Oh, I don't construct commands in. So now when we construct Redis, we kind of need to pass what commands we want to support, right? So we'll just add a list of, the get command, the set command, and the delete command. And you could imagine that this would actually be, how I envision this happening is a lot of these are kind of problem oriented around a particular data type. So if you look at like, you have hset, you have hget, you have lpush, lpop. I happen to know Redis APIs, so I know that these are coming. And so they're kind of like logically oriented around a particular underlying data type. And so I imagine these could kind of get extracted into modules, and those modules would be responsible. They'd publish like sets of commands, and then you'd basically just continue aggregating commands into larger and larger sets. So let's go ahead and now run this with the actual underlying commands. Of course, has is not supported. I removed support for has. So let's go ahead and remove has from our test cases, rerun it once more,
breaking change.
Cross our fingers, and everything works.
Nice.
I've done nothing new.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't actually done your
prompt. You did. But this is getting there. Getting there. Anyway, let's go ahead and keep going. So I'm going to need 3 commands. I need an hset command. I'm going to need a hget command, and I will need a hgetAll command.
Yep.
And what I'm going to do is, instead of doing this, I'm going to do hash commands, and I'm just going to make it array because I'm lazy. So this will be hset, hget, hit, hget, and hgetAll. And now we'll just get rid of these. Cool. And then these need handlers, so let's go ahead and give these all handlers. And we'll go ahead and start implementing. So hset, what do we want to do if we've already inserted a non-hash data type into a key? It might error, so I think it could be valid to error here as well.
Yeah, let's error on when that happens.
Okay, so we're going to say if data get the key, and we're just going to say if this is like an instance of map, which means it's we're going to use maps for these hashes, then we can do something. Or actually, what we're going to do is we're going to do, if it has the key and the data key is not an instance of a map, right? Then what we will do is throw in an error.
Cool.
Key already exists. Cool. That is not hashed. Cool. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to just get or create a map to assign these properties into. So this will be data get key or a new map. So basically and I'll use this default thing. Cool. So if we don't have a key, if we don't have that map, we'll just go ahead and create one. And then what we'll do at the end is we will set the map back in. So if this is the same map, this should just set the exact same key back in. And if we haven't set it yet, then it will set it for the first time, right? Cool. So then we'll do map set field value. And I think we have to return OK by spec. Let's go ahead and start doing hget. So we'll have our data, we'll have our key and a field. And then what we'll do is some similar logic here. If we have a key and the key's not in this map, we could also I imagine that for commands like this, there's ways to optimize this pre-processing that we're doing where we're expecting underlying data types. I'm not going to stress about it, but I'll just flag that there will be duplication because we need to do this key check on every single underlying data type, but optimizations can come later.
No worries.
So then what we want to do is we want to grab the map, and then if there's not a map, then we'll just return null, right? We'll just say there is no, and this is kind of inconsistent because I think on our get previously we return undefined here. We could also technically probably make that null or something, but I'm not worrying about it. Just calling out that this is going to be a little bit inconsistent, but it's okay. We can work out those inconsistencies between null and undefined later.
Don't worry, I'm inconsistent. It's okay. No worries.
And then otherwise, we can just return this. Let's
Sweet.
also go ahead and update I won't implement hgetAll yet because I want to test these. But let's go ahead and do this. And the other thing that I'm noticing is that we have some inconsistencies with casing. I'm assuming command names are case insensitive. Yeah. Is that true of all values, or is it just true of command names?
Just the command names, right?
Okay.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So then what we'll do is we will to lowercase the command name when we actually go to look it up.
Good.
This will overcompute the command name to lowercase because every iteration of this find, hypothetically, we would do it. Maybe it can be jitted out, but I'm not worrying about performance yet.
It's fine.
So.
My bad for changing the casing, so it's not a big deal.
You're good. It's not a big deal. I, for some reason, I hid the code and I don't know how to get it back. There it is. I don't know. I used to have the console on the sidebar. Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it back.
Nice.
Okay, I forgot to add the commands, but now this is pretty easy. We just can spread in our hash commands that I've constructed as an array.
Very cool.
And now I don't need to go and manually relist them all.
Cool.
Cool. So let's see what this did. So age set, I'm going to just actually, I'm going to console
Yeah,
log,
yeah, for sure.
or I'm going to not console log, I'm going to comment out all of the
Hmm.
other cases for now. So I see okay value and undefined. This looks generally right.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and try to make it throw.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool.
Awesome.
And I need to just make h
Get
get
all.
all
Hmm.
actually do something. Cool. So this is actually a lot simpler. We will do a lot of the same logic as hget.
Hmm.
Like I mentioned, this is not super optimal.
Yeah, no worries.
And then what we'll do here is we will just do, oh, and I need to update my handler, key, and I'll do object from entries map to entry or map entries. Is that what it is? I can never remember map methods. I don't really, I don't write too much JavaScript anymore, you know? So who knows? Let me look it up.
Oh, wow. Yeah, use Google.
Yeah, map prototype entries.
Looks like
Okay,
it
cool.
worked too. Yeah.
Sweet. So yeah, this is all to really quickly explain this. I want to return like a JSON object. The problem is like I have a map. Map
Yep.
isn't JSON serializable by default. If I JSON stringify map, it will just do something very useless. And so to get it into a JSON object that actually is safe to serialize, I assume for a server, we talked about this earlier, I'm just going to get the entries and then construct an object from those entries,
Nice.
which then it looks like is doing the right thing.
Sweet. Let's set another value and see what
Oh,
happens. Yeah.
sweet. Let's set foo to bar,
Mm-hmm.
and we will just h get all, get all,
Get all.
h get all key, and let's also just h get key foo, just so that we're really
Mm-hmm.
confident in this.
Yeah.
And it looks like everything is working as we would expect it to be.
Wow. Very nice. Awesome. And then, oh, what are you gonna? Okay. Oh, you're
Oh,
just.
I'm just doing a little bit of a mild refactoring.
Oh,
Don't
you're
mind
just gonna.
me. I'm just pulling these into like
Yeah.
logical groupings of kind of like modules, just because it's been driving me a little bit crazy
You
that
don't
these
like when they're
are.
all different. Yeah.
It's more that like I want to just spread these in,
Yeah.
and I imagine that like the way that this would work would actually be that you would have modules that
Mm-hmm.
kind of aggregate these,
Yeah.
but we don't have, we're trying, I'm trying to do this in a single file, and so I'm pretending that like this is logically your module boundaries,
For sure. Got it.
uh,
Yeah,
which
that's a
I
good
think
way
is easier
to.
to.
Yeah, that's a good way to. Yeah, separate code, different modules for different.
Right. And so yeah, I imagine like this is a module,
Mm-hmm.
this is a module. And with TypeScript, you could get a lot of this this would all be typed obviously
Mm-hmm.
end to end. And you could provide type safety around
Mm-hmm.
all of this, and you could have like maybe a narrowing function that is run in a group of commands that does things like validation of underlying data types and things
Yep.
like that. Or you could extract this into like some utility function that
Yep.
would do fetching plus assertion at the same time. So those optimizations would probably happen. I don't think they're worth doing in an interview, but yeah.
So that was awesome. Now for our last part, we're going to implement 3 more commands. So we have lpush, rpush, and lrange. So lpush takes a key and an element, and the idea is to push something into that key in the beginning of the list. So imagine element is a list. Rpush, similar to lpush, but on the right side. And both of these will return the length of the list after you push. And then lrange takes a key, a start, and a stop, and you want to return the list of elements in that specified range for that key.
Okay. And I assume that when you mentioned this, we were talking about lists, not sets. So there's no like I assume that order. First of all, that yeah, we're not just doing insertion order. You mentioned this by lpush, rpush, but also that these are not unique lists that they can have duplicate values.
Yes, they can have duplicate values.
Okay, cool. So I've already created this list commands that I basically copied and pasted. And what we'll do is we'll kind of tweak some of these assertions.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be array is array this time because we'll use an array as our underlying data structure. And we can actually just copy this for all of these.
Sweet.
So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and just spread in our list commands.
Nice. Working before
So
you get
good to
the
go.
error.
I know. I know I'm going to get
You're
the error the
learning, you're
second that I
learning.
try to run it. I know. So L push, this is pretty simple. We'll just construct a new array or get the one at that point.
Mhm.
And it just takes in a key and a value, right? Key and element to
Yes.
push in. So we'll tweak this to R instead. And then we will, so L push is actually an unshift.
Mhm.
I need to see what unshift actually returns in JavaScript. I can never remember. I don't, returns the new length of the array. Okay, cool. So this will
Oh
already
wow,
do
it already does it for you. Nice.
the right thing. Yep. And I just need to remove the field,
Mhm.
make this the value. So we can delete all of this.
Sweet.
And let's go ahead and do R push. R push is going to be implemented nearly identically. The only difference is that we will actually use push because it's on the right side, right? Yep.
Yes.
And then we'll change this to value.
Sweet.
And then L range, we'll get a key and then we'll get a start and a stop, I assume.
Yes. Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Cool. And then we will go ahead and we'll say if there's not an array, return null. Otherwise, we'll need to slice from the start to the stop. Now, couple things worth noting. We've implemented a string-based interface. So we've thus far assumed that all the input is valid. Starting and stopping, I have to get these into numbers effectively, right?
Yeah. Yes, you do.
Do you want
Yeah,
me to? I mean, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to like throw if they're if
No,
you pass in
don't
something that
worry
is not
about
a
it.
valid number?
Assume that they will be real numbers. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to be really lazy then and just do plus coercion
Cool.
to get them into number types. Slice might actually do this because a lot of JavaScript API methods have a habit of calling to number on something, like it's like the spec function to number. But I don't know if this one does off the top of my head.
And then obviously if you're out of bounds, you'd have like another method that checks the length. But we don't have to worry about that. I'm assuming you.
Yeah, those are fairly trivial to add.
But don't worry about it. It's okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I understand that you would get that.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And is the start and stop, are these zero indexed? Is the 0, 1, load element 0 and 1 are the inclusive, exclusive?
Okay, so then for start and stop, assume that start is inclusive and then stop is exclusive. So
this should just return a single
0.
key,
Yes,
the last
the
one.
single one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we got null, so that's we're getting somewhere. So that means that it doesn't think that the key is there. So let's just do something a little bit interesting. I'm going to just debug. We'll just look at the underlying data. I probably wrote the code wrong, and this is probably easy to debug, but I'll go through the exercise of pretending like I can't, figure out whatever's going on. So it looks like we're not setting the map like into the underlying data store. This is actually absolutely correct. We are, we're shifting and pushing, but we're not actually setting this array back in. So a couple things that we could do here. We'll just kind of aggregate a return value that we return at the end. And then we'll do the same thing that we do here, which is we'll set the key and the array into the data structure after we do these operations.
Cool.
Cool. So let's go ahead and run this.
Nice.
And now we actually see that we have our underlying data store being updated. So the nice thing about having a global data store like this and having a single hook where this goes in is that generic debugging is pretty easy because I can I have a pretty high separation of concerns here. Let's do a couple other tests. Let's do 0, 0, and then let's do 0, 2 as well.
And then maybe change the name of them so it's not just.
Oh, that's a good call. Let me actually do that.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll do 1 and 2. And I'm not actually sure what slice will do if it's 0, 0, if I pass 2 zeros into slice. Cool. It doesn't empty, right? So it looks like everything is working as it should be. Let me
Sweet.
really quickly talk about things that I think are important to do.
Okay.
So obviously, this is not production ready code. There's a couple things that I think we would need to do before we make it production ready. It doesn't have quite enough error handling around edge cases. We have a little bit of error handling in here, but things like input parsing is not perfect. So, perfect example here being L range, our start and stop. We're just coursing these into numbers. This could, if we pass foo here instead of a number,
Yeah.
we kind of start running into crazy behavior where it's going to try to parse foo as a number and
Yeah.
we'll return nan, and then we'll be slicing it off of nan. The code won't fail because I think that slice probably will handle nan. It just will do something weird, or not probably weird, just return nothing. But just worth considering here. The other thing is all of these command lists can kind of be separated out into separate files. So right now we're kind of working in a single file for the sake of an interview, but you could imagine that each one of these can logically be broken up into kind of its own module that can build test logically for its data type, its underlying data type, right? The other thing that these could do, commands as a whole, is they could have some sort of pre and post processing that we do based on a kind of consistent data type here. So for example, with key value pairs, we know that the value is always a string, right? And so we could basically, anytime we try to retrieve out of the store, we could have some assertion that would tell us, it would basically be these inline assertions that we're doing elsewhere, but it would be, someone is calling me. It would be these assertions that we would be doing, but it would kind of happen generically. That way, if we forget to do an assertion, things don't blow up. The other things that I think could be worth doing here, we don't have any tests. Obviously, I think that, we've been just trying to solve the problem and using test cases to solve the problem, but I think that ideally you would write some tests around this. The nice thing about the approach that we've taken here is that tests are actually pretty easy to write. It's fairly simple to boot a minimal client with variable commands. So if you want to test intersections between key value pair commands, you can just grab that module, boot up a Redis client with just that module, and then execute test cases. Each one of these handlers is also really easy to individually test. You could just pass it arbitrary maps and then look at the output of the map and expect it to match some given output, or to match some particular return value. So by leveraging everything is pure input. We don't have there are not pure functions, obviously, but by having everything kind of be input arguments, and then return values, it kind of makes testing pretty easy. We do have to test like the effects of the functions. We have to like pass it an input and then look at how it modifies the inputs. So it's not super ideal. And this is what I talked about earlier about, you could have this work with data in a different way that makes it a little bit easier to test. Not sure if it's like better or worse. It's just, different approaches, right? And I think that's like a good high level overview of what I think I would like initially tackle. Tests would go a long way. And you could auto generate a hell of a lot of tests too. I mean, most of these commands you could kind of procedurally go through and test really weird edge cases and make sure that, everything works as you would expect it to work. Yeah. And then this Redis class itself, you can test it. The nice thing about the separation here is that this Redis class, it's fairly simple to test. It does very little, right? All that it really does is keep an underlying data store and then fork out to commands. So testing this is actually really simple, and everything individually, that's kind of the point of this architecture, is that everything can be tested individually. The other thing worth noting here is that we don't handle like name conflicts. So if two command modules try to register the same underlying handler, what happens? We don't have a good story around that. And I would also probably move away from classes. I did this as classes just to prototype it out and to kind of get something that's working. I don't love classes in JavaScript, and I generally try to avoid them because I feel like more people get confused than they add value. And so I would just kind of make this functional and have like some, create Redis function that we can call, and we can, move data and commands into, function scope variables, basically. Small things I would do.
Nice. Do you have any questions for me?
When can I start?
Bold of you to assume that you got the job.
Oh, shit.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks, Jordan, for coming and helping out and showing us a glimpse into your mega brain.
Don't oversell my intelligence. I mean,
um,
I think that I'm like okay at
um,
it, but
you're pretty smart. I wouldn't
I'm okay.
undersell.
Like I'm not.
I think I'm
I
selling
mean,
at
I
the
don't
right
know.
amount.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks, Jordan, for coming by. Say bye.
Peace of always. Debate
You
me.
can't do that anymore. You don't
I
even
know.
stream.
RIP. Thanks, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the video.
And what
Make
should they
sure you
do?
like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a little comment below in the doobly doo. Don't forget to search for Mewtwo up there and click all of the videos by Mewtwo. Make sure you like all of them. And then tell your friends, like her tweets on Twitter, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal,
TikTok, everything. Yeah.
TikTok.
TikTok,
Sorry, I got to the
Instagram.
monetary stuff before I got to the useless stuff. TikTok, Instagram. Make sure that you leave a comment that says, "Damn, you're uh, uh, good at content."
Wow. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you for that. That's great. If you're
Don't be misogynistic.
all right. Bye. Bye, bye, bye. I hope this recorded. Could you
I'm
imagine?
not doing it again.
Yeah, could you imagine? None of it
I'm
came
not
through.
doing it again.
Oh,
See ya.
look at this.
What? Did you just call my desk lowering that scroll?
Yeah, I did. All right, bye.